Good morning, LinkedIn. Happy Friday. Welcome to
Woo.
another edition of Let's Build Properties of Mr. Ruxton. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's good to see your face, Chris. It's been too long. We had
Thank you.
vacations, we had hurricanes. It was an exciting time for everyone.
Yeah,
Just throwing
exciting.
wrenches into the works.
Exciting is one way to put it. That's for sure.
I'm happy for October to
Yes.
be over. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
ready to move into the least productive part of the year, as I've joked with several people, which is I'm like, yeah, we're halfway through quarter four, and someone's like, what quarters do you work on? I'm like, oh yeah, this is quarter four, but like October, quarter four is October, and then like 2 weeks in November and 2 weeks in December, if even that. So like we're halfway through quarter four. If you have to understand that, and like I don't know like where you work, especially I mean if you work at any US company, like November is about half month, and then December is also a half month. So we're cruising to the end of the year. That's all I'll say.
Man, that's so true. And just to add my favorite color of perspective, it's like the the least productive quarter of the year with probably the most expectations of results. Right?
If I was to tell you, I am at my we're about to go through a phase of just contract renewals, and we have already moved our HubSpot one up to last quarter, which was game changing, honestly. Because HubSpot really likes to cut deals. This is not on the record, I guess, to some extent, but they love to cut deals quarter three and a quarter four. That I've never seen them cut in quarter four. So if you need to change your renewal, maybe that's a good time to do it. It's right after inbound. They're really hyped after inbound, I guess. But the a lot of our contracts renew like at the end of like traditional quarter four, which for us now is quarter two. So it's like I've got to like figure out, man, I thought I had 2 months to figure out these contracts. I actually really only have like 4 weeks because everyone's gonna be I'm gonna have to deal with like people going on vacation, people being out of office, like offices closing. I'm like, this is great. Why did we do this to ourselves? I'm trying really hard to move those things now so we don't have that problem anymore.
Yep.
But we'll
Well,
see.
that's a good admin for sure. Trying to help with that. Because again, we how often do we have all the information
Oh
and
yeah.
we just choose not to use the insights or try to gain the insights and think about
No.
how we could do things differently.
No, we just keep doing the same thing again.
Right. Uh, but not everybody.
No.
And often that starts. It always starts with awareness, honestly, and that's why we're here. We're like, I mean, so often, even the most powerful users of HubSpot having a really hard time keeping up right now. So some of my favorite conversations are the ones where somebody's talking about a challenge, and I'm just like, oh, here's a link, done in 5 minutes. Like, it fixes your problem. Here's a link to the beta, or here's a link to now I think the challenge is like I used to just be able to go look at the beta updates, but now you start missing stuff where they're just improving the products that already exist or the
Yeah.
functionality and the tools that already exist. And unless you literally run into it, like while you're working in the portal, you're not going to see it. So
And
hopefully we
it's
can
it's
help.
wild the amount of things that I've noticed now, like we'll go into beta for a very short period of time. And like it'll maybe like a month it's in beta and then it's launched. And you're like, oh, this is actually live now. Oh, okay. Like, 'cause I try a lot of times this is a hot take, which is I enroll everyone in all our betas. And for there's a lot of betas you can't, it's like it's not an option. Like you have to enroll everyone. So it's the default for me. But a lot of times I will enroll everyone in betas. And the only reason I do that is because I want to see people notice. Because sometimes I'm like, hey, and especially when it's something that like is not catastrophically going to change their process, I'm like, it can only help them. I'm like, if they'll start using it, usually the people I always tell like my core group of HubSpot people that are close to me, hey, this I've enrolled you guys in this beta. Just be aware that it's there. Try it out. But I think that's the best way to get adoption too. Is like it's wild. And generally speaking, most public betas are relatively stable. I don't think I've in recent history can think of a public beta that wasn't super stable. I know the most unstable one is a private beta, which is the association label one regarding workflow actions, which is working for me but other people are having some issues with it. But I mean, overall though, this the public betas are pretty stable. Like, don't feel scared. If you're ever like scared, like, oh, I don't want to enroll in too many betas, like I recommend at least try it for yourself and see that it really doesn't. I don't ever find instability an issue for me with betas. So
Yeah.
I think
No, it's
HubSpot's
only
very deliberate about their betas being small. Rarely is it a huge thing. And if it's a huge thing, it takes a lot of time. And I would say that like the best example I can give to that is when they redid the global nav. I was in the private beta for that because I went to inbound and I talked to the product manager and he's like, I'll get you in. And I was in within like a week. And I was in it for like a whole year to the point I'd forgotten what the regular navigation looked like. I was like, oh yeah. Not for all of you, some of you don't have this. It's just me who has this. So when we actually launched, they actually did the launch, like, hey, we're transitioning people over. I'm like, oh yeah, I've had this for like a while now. It's hard to forget that sometimes, but
yeah.
they're very stable, and I think people should make a point of enrolling what you can. But my favorite one right now, we talk about properties all the time, and this one is huge for properties. Is talking about merges. Chris, do you have any merge horror stories? Every admin has a merge horror story.
Uh
I feel like.
Not horror stories, just annoyances. Like you think it's gonna work one way and then it doesn't, and like, yeah, you feel bad, like because you can't
And it's
go
the one,
back.
there's like four things in HubSpot you can't undo once you do them. Like
Yes,
HubSpot's pretty good at having like an oopsie button for a lot of things. Merges is one of the things. Once you do it, it's done and you're done for. And it's the end of the road for you.
right. And that's where like
So
usually it relates to, oh, you've built the safety for me to just try things
yeah,
out and then do it. And even though I see I can't go back, I know in the rest of the system there's messages like
yes.
that. We can always go back, and then you do it, and you're like, oh,
Like, oh no.
lesson learned. I'm not
And
going to
it's and
touch merges for like a year.
you can't permission it. Like, you can't permission merges. You can't say, oh, these people are allowed to merge and these people aren't. And it's like, I think merges can be as dangerous as deletes. So it's like, because essentially up to this point, and that's I promise I'll get to the point in a minute. The like this update is important. Um, up to that point, like when you merge a record today, like it absorbs one record goes away. Like it essentially goes away and is wiped from the ever existing. Some things are brought over, some are not. It's a little bit kind of cryptic sometimes what is brought over. And then if you do it wrong, like you sometimes can lose data and never have a really hard time trying to find how to get it back. But if you want to search for it in product updates, it's called updates to CRM object merges, which is wild to me because it's using the API name. Rarely they don't put like API level names in betas, but hey, um, the coolest thing about this, and it's one of those really weird things. Like you look at it, go, this is fine. Like you like, why is it a big deal? First of all, it's coming in January of next year, whether you like it or not. So this is one of those things like you can opt into it now and live this new life, or you can wait to January where you'll be forced into this new life. And that's why I think it's important people know about it. The biggest change here is that now when you merge contacts and companies or any CRM object, custom objects included, you're not going to preserve a record ID. You're going to get a new record ID. So if you take record ID, like if you merge Brian Halligan, that we all have in our HubSpot record, with Maria Sample, I think it's Maria Sample. I remember the two like generic. The first one, if you merge those two together, you will generate record ID number 3. It's not going to absorb 1 or 2. It's going to be 3. And I think that is huge because it has huge implications for a lot of people's workflows. If you build your workflows on like, don't re-enroll, that's now a net new record. So it can re-enroll on a workflow because it's never been there before. It's a new record. It's brand new. So I think people need to understand that like now with this coming up, if you merge things, you have a risk that wasn't there before. It's a new risk. I think it's great. I think it's a good time for us to look back and go, how many object created workflows did you just create that were based on a new object being created that this could mess up? But I think it's a good thing for us because it also changes how we value property values as well, which is previously when you merged records, it wasn't very clear which properties actually were kept and which ones were not kept. And now what's happening is previously, if there was missing, and if it was like you had your primary record need your secondary record, and you're merging your secondary record into your primary record. If the secondary record had like street address and your primary didn't, it brought the street address over. That made total sense. But what happens when you have two different street addresses? Which one does it preserve? And it was kind of a mixed bag. For some properties, it would change it, some it wouldn't. Now they're making it the rule that it's going to keep whatever was on the primary record. So if you have a secondary record that has better up-to-date information, you might want to move that over first, or make that, like, you might want to reconsider which one's your primary record. So I think there's a lot more thinking going into this and a bit more standardization, which is good. But if you've kind of just flew by the seat of your pants for the past 5 years with merges, like, I think this is something that you need to let your people know about. I think it's something that every admin should know about, but something that definitely your end users who do merge, like your CSMs, your um, customer support people, they need to know about these sort of things, because like if they've been merging tickets like crazy, this is a huge, this is a huge change for them. And you have the ability to actually do it with the actual primary label, which I think is huge. It's like one of those sneaky ones where like you're like, but if you don't read into it, somebody don't realize that's why you've got to unpack it in a show like this. And it snuck in there. It came out October 16th. It's in the middle of a hurricane when this happened. And I was like, wait, I don't like, it caught me off guard. So what are your thoughts on that, Chris? Chris, I think you're muted.
I have been muted for a very long time. That's awkward.
I was making sure it wasn't me. And then in the very bottom, Riverside did not make a really good job of showing the actual mute icon. I was like,
Oh,
oh no.
this is what
So you seem
happens
very
when I
passionate
just
about what you're saying, if you
get
want to
into
repeat
it.
that.
Yeah. Oh man, this is what happens.
Don't you love live TV?
This is why producers are needed. All that stuff. Yep, we'll figure it out someday. It's important. These are the main point is for things like merges, the best people to do it are the ones that are in it like every day. Like the
Yeah.
ones that are in the task, notice the duplication immediately. They need to be able to merge it at that moment and understand everything that's going to happen when they do that. The more unclear that um, is when admins have to like, want to permission it and like, hey, I can't do anything to stop you from just firing off 1,000 workflows if somebody merges. So now you can't merge, and now it's more work on the admin side. Okay, now you got to tell
Yeah.
me when you want to merge something. Like that's where the process starts to break down, and that's like the antithesis of HubSpot in terms of empowering users to help maintain the
Yeah.
data, right? And the concern that I have is related to association labels, and like, while excess associations will be dropped, um, making sure everybody understands what that means, because associations are really can be hard to keep track of and easy to lose when you start going from object to object across the life cycle.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why the workflow association um, beta that you mentioned earlier is so important.
Yeah.
Like, now, I'd argue in a lot of cases, it's good to have some manual effort applied there as you're like, okay, deal closes. Now this stuff needs to happen. Somebody is making sure that all the associations have come over, um, and they're labeled properly, because we're firing emails, and we're doing a lot of things related to that relationship, which is defined by the label. And just losing that, um, like, will impact some handoffs if it's a important part of the process. And so I think it's one of those seemingly small things that's going to change process management. And whenever we have changes to like process management and the risks that you talked about, how there's nothing to say that this can't just be enrolled in a new workflow,
Yeah.
like when we can merge, like
Yeah.
if this is in this stage and this is in another stage, and one stage fires the workflow and the other one doesn't, right? Like all of those things, we're going to have to get super clear on process related
And I
to this
think
activity.
there's almost something to be said that when you're creating, like as an administrator, if you're creating workflows to move process along, like, and the best, like the easiest example to use is you look at a deal pipeline, right? I don't know any administrator who doesn't have some sort of workflow that runs at some point in their deal pipeline, whether it's for purposes of reporting, whether it's to keep data correct. Like, and a couple of jobs back, I had a workflow that triggered on every stage change. So anytime a stage changed, it would then trigger a step. Like it would trigger a workflow. It might say like, hey, go ahead and assign this record, or create this object to another team, or create an invoice, or like check for a deal, like or check for a contract in a property or something like that. Like it would do something. And if you have like something that's maybe like, oh, I have this closed loss deal and I have this open deal, and actually they're in the same deal. I don't know why this happened. I'm going to merge them. If you don't know what you're doing, you could create a reporting nightmare if you have that set up. But if you haven't distilled that information to your team, that's super important. I think this drives home the idea that you have to communicate how your CRM works to people who are in it every day. And for a long time, I think there's been some sort of, like people are like, oh yeah, we have process documentation. Like my sales rep need to know how to do their job. And that's great. That's step one. Step two is, okay, now they know how to do their job. They have to understand like what their impacts when they do something, what that impacts downwind from them or upwind from them to some extent. And I think a lot of people have kept like sales reps, especially in the dark with that, because they're like, you don't need to know, but like they do. And frankly, I found that reps who understand their impact globally tend to be better reps,
Yeah.
and shockingly often fill in the CRM more. So like, because they understand it, like you're giving them that context. That's like, hey, your actions here directly affect your CRO's ability to do their job. So if you do this correctly, they do better, and then you look good, versus you doing something, not doing something, and then they get angry, and then guess who they're going to come yell at? Me. But I'm then going to come yell at you. So like, so like that's, I think that's super important to understand. And it kind of goes in kind of hand in hand with another that came, I think, 2 days prior to that, which is And this actually, I'm realizing the release date for this is October 31st. So it's next week. So if you're not prepared for this one, I'm sorry in advance, which is property adjacent. It's workflow based, but it's property adjacent, which is if you look up edit record action, that one should come up, which is, oh no, it's definitely there. It's like edit, I put set property, try that one. Does it have a limit on it? Hold on. It's pro and enterprise, at least. Ooh. Here, I will. You want to share my screen?
Yeah,
Apparently, you don't get to see the thing.
Yeah. And
Let
there
me
was a
see.
statement that I was going to highlight in this other update, like something to
Yeah.
the effect of like, and I love it when they highlight this stuff. And this is the stuff that they could be better about communicating, because it's like under the why, it also said to enable better functionality or more options for merging in the future, right? It's hard
Yeah.
for them to get there when everything is customized, and that's the importance of standardization. And at some point, you know, I'm sorry, I'm just throwing AI at everything right now, but at some
hmm
point, I want an agent that's just merging stuff for me, honestly, right?
It's funny because it's funny you mentioned that because this week I was working on, we have the ever present everybody hates states, right? Which is like HubSpot has state region is a single line text property. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole today, but of why that's dumb. But like HubSpot even recognizes it's dumb because they allow you to fill states as an option in a drop down select. So they know people do it. Like they're very aware that that's a thing. And I know why it's there. Besides the point. So we have on all our forms, we have a drop down for US state. And it says like, select your US state, and they pick the state and we move on with our lives. And we do that because then you can filter based of like regions and assign a salesperson and do all that sort of stuff. But the problem we encountered this week actually was that LinkedIn sends data to state region. And today you can actually set in, I believe it's in company or contact settings, you can set state region to be like defaults to full state names or defaults to the two-digit short code when it does insights. I don't know when that came out. I think that came out like 6 or 7 months ago, where like you can actually set the default. So like when it does insights, now I don't know if that'll change with Breeze because I know company insights is going away. Breeze is kind of coming in to replace that. But the problem was ours is set to two character defaults. And the two-character defaults has been great for me. The problem is LinkedIn doesn't care. LinkedIn still sends the full state name. And one of our marketing people pointed out to me like, hey, I have a bunch of contacts that are coming in that aren't generating leads in the sales team's prospecting view. And I can't figure out why. And I'm like, what's passing? And then we like figured out it was passing the state as a full name. It was passing California instead of CA, right? So I look into it, I'm like, can I change it? Like LinkedIn, no. LinkedIn's like, no, that's what we send, suck it up. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, well, how do I translate California to CA? Like, I can't just tell it to like, there's no workflow action today that says shorten this to 2 digits. Because unfortunately, no states are consistent, right? Like Montana's MT, it's not MO. That's a different state. So you can't even just be like shorten it to the first two letters and figure it out. So like, what do I do? And then I delved into the world of custom code. And I was like, well, let me map states and all that stuff, which is a great point for, I don't know how to code, but ChatGPT does. And I use ChatGPT to get me the basic code. And then I debug the crap out of it to get to what I need to do. But that's a prime example of like not how these changes are hard to see, and it's little things like that that can kind of mess up your whole process.
Yeah.
That being said, this specific product update is wild to me, which is if you've used workflows for any length of time, you've lived in the world where you have like clear property and then you set the property and there's a couple places you do that a lot, because if you don't set property or copy property, wouldn't actually like do it. It would say, oh, that already exists. And you would get like a random log error where it'd be like, oh, I'm not going to change it because I'm not like life cycle stage, an example of that. Like if you try to change life cycle stage backwards by just doing set property, it would say, oh no, you can't do that because life cycle stages can't go back. And it's like, yeah, but like sometimes a use case where you actually have to do it. They're now replacing copy, set, and clear with one record workflow, which will be like edit record action. or they're just dumbling it all into one. So if you have workflows that have like clear and then set, like those are going to both be replaced by this new edit record workflow action. And this comes out October 31st on Halloween, which is like a spooky, kind of scary because this theoretically could break a lot of workflows on Halloween, which is wild to me that that was the date they picked. I'm not sure. It doesn't specify here what's going to happen to existing like ones. I don't know if like their plans to leave. Knowing HubSpot, usually it's like they'll just leave existing ones, but you won't be able to create new ones that way. So at least as an admin, you'll be able to go in and change it. But it is interesting to me that they're doing this to kind of almost like clean up your workflows. 'Cause I think a lot of people have lived in the world where I've worked at places where like they're like, well, I have to clear the property before I can fill it. I'm like, no, you don't. Just set the property as a new thing. Like, why are you wasting a workflow action? Not that they charge us for workflow action, but I'm like, why are you wasting time with clearing properties and setting? Like, just set the property. So this
Yeah.
is sort of stuff that's important too, because I think there's a lot of people who have probably aging workflows, and a very good reminder that you should have some form of workflow audit process in place. That's something I've learned the hard way, that like it's very easy to have a workflow that you forget about. Like I have, I don't know, 200 something workflows that are running across 9 different objects. I don't know every single workflow. Like I know most of them, but like I know the ones I go to the most, but like I don't know like every single one. And sometimes I don't know what every single one does. And it's a testament to why AI descriptions and workflows are amazing, because they actually put the description so you can figure it out a lot faster. And I think now even it auto populates. It tells you like, here, do you want to just accept this description rather than you having to like prompt it, which I think is fantastic. But it's a testament to the fact that like a lot of admins come in, and this isn't, I don't want to throw any shade at partners. I think in the same thing with partners, and a lot of admins will come in, or partners will come in, they'll make a bunch of workflows, they'll do a bunch of changes, and then they'll leave, or for whatever reason. Myself included, I've come into companies and left within a year before. And these sort of changes can break your CRM if you don't have someone who's looking at it and then actually going back and checking. And like, it's made me realize that you have to be consistent in your maintenance. And like tech debt, this is tech debt nobody planned for. And HubSpot loves to throw tech debt at us, and we kind of like brush it off. But it's positive tech debt, because it's like we're optimizing it, we're changing it so we can have better, more understandable workflows. But this is something where you have to make the time to go back and check. Like this is where like understanding how important properties are is super like wow, because you might be changing a property somewhere and not realize it's about to get bricked, because previously you just cleared it, and now it's not going to get cleared unless you do this. And I think this also includes, if I'm right, you can do it based off associated objects too. They've added that functionality in here too.
Oh,
Yeah, so you can
very
have like
nice.
in a contact workflow, you can change a property on a company, an
Oh,
associated company.
yes. All
That's also
right.
stuck in here,
Now we're
but
talking. But that's the thing,
that
that
is
that changes how you look at workflows now.
right.
Like if you can do that instead of like passing between workflows, and just, this is exciting to see. Um uh yeah, like Matthew says, like awareness, the only way to stay aware of what's happening is regular review of your process
Yeah.
of updates, because they're going to throw this stuff at you, whether you want it or not. They're very receptive to feedback. If you say it's
Yes.
going to break your whole system, like they will help you figure out how to adjust for that, and things like that. But you can't tell them what's going on if you don't know what's going on. And number one role of an admin, in my opinion, is being aware of how your system is operating and what changes are being made.
And I
So
will say, like, this is not medium. In my opinion, this should be high. And
yeah,
like for context, this came out October 14th, and they're saying it's scheduled to release October 31st. Now that can change, obviously. But and I'm not even in this beta. I just requested it. But this is coming October 31st.
yeah,
Like it's
expect
the
it.
25th. Like it's 6 days away. And I feel like I went back like through LinkedIn. I was like trying to find if anyone. Few people have talked about this. Like this is a huge, huge change that is just sneaking up on us. And like to your point, I guess it's not visible like in your portal, which is wild to me.
Well,
Because I'm looking here.
I don't have any of those, so
Oh,
I just have starter in the portal
oh yeah,
I was
yeah. This is
showing.
only affecting
Yeah, and I
Pro
don't have,
Enterprise.
and I have content enterprise, which is the only thing not listed on there. We won't talk about
Yeah.
that. But I look forward to the day where CRM related stuff like happens in CRM related seats, um,
Yeah,
or Ops Hub. I think that's where like should be
yeah,
Ops
well,
Hub focused or just CRM focused. And I think the smart CRM section of stuff, the thing that you pay for, the CRM seat, we're not quite there yet. As soon as we are, I think a lot of this language is going to start changing.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I
but
think
this
it's
is
wild to me that in Starter you don't have access to workflows. Like you have access to them in the case of like it's simple workflows, like on a form. Like when a form happens, do this, or when a deal passes this stage, you can go do that workflow action inside of those settings, but you have limited access to like you've limits to what you can do. I think it's a detriment to HubSpot to some extent because I've argued for the longest time that you should at least give you like up to 5 workflows per object. It
yeah.
means you have to be very mindful of what those workflows do, but like if that is like workflows are the biggest use case for me to tell someone to get out of Starter. But I don't think people necessarily need Pro just for workflows. Like that's something that like you should have access to like in Starter because you don't understand that at all. Like you don't get that sort of like what how amazing workflows can be. Like, give them the bite so that they want to get more. You know?
Yeah, we know that automation is one of those things that you need to level up for. So I'd be surprised, like the closer you get to that, is some form automation stuff. But I think either way, there's some exciting updates happening, and you just got to know what's going on. Take the
Hmm.
time to review your processes. We hope this was super helpful today. Uh, that's why we're here. We'll be here same time next week.
Yeah.
If that truly fired on October 31st, we'll be able to tell.
We'll be reviewing it on November 1st, going,
Yeah,
woo,
yeah, we'll
let's
be
go
able
see
to
what broke.
share if anything happened. So until then, maybe find some of those opportunities to stop, maybe get ahead of that, and let's grow. Have a great weekend, everybody.
See you guys.